Wilson Farm was established in 1884 by an Irish family who had recently immigrated to the Lexington area. The family was headed by James Alexander Wilson. It started out as a non-retail farm. Since the population at the time was more concentrated in Boston, Wilson would gather his own produce and combine it with that of surrounding smaller farms and bring the collection to Quincy Market in Boston to sell. During the winter months, when trips to the market were less frequent, the Wilsons stored their vegetables in earth pits.
In 1920, James Wilson turned over the business to his sons Stanley and Walter Wilson, who operated the business in a similar style through the interwar years. We spoke with Donald Wilson, the grandson of James, who was able to give us more insight into the history of Wilson Farm at this time.
Well, there was very little available manpower at that time, so you had to make adjustments for that. We used women. We've got a lot of women workers from the Waltham area, and from actually some came out from Boston, from East Boston. And they worked all during the war and after the war, so for quite a while.
After World War II, returning veterans were given inexpensive housing on Hill and Cedar Street through the GI Bill, resulting in an increase in population and families in Lexington. Lexington's section of Route 128 opened in 1951, further expanding potential business for Wilson Farm closer to home. Previously, the Wilsons had run a delivery service bringing fresh produce to the surrounding areas, but as Bostonians moved into the suburbs, Wilson Farm took advantage of this new market and opened their new retail store in the form of a small farm stand in 1954.
But as people were able to get more cars, get more gas, they tended to drive, and they'd come out to the farm and get it. So finally, in about 1954, we gave up the retail delivery routes, and that's when the year after the retail stand started.
Thus, in the early 1950s, Stanley and Walter's sons Donald and Alan Wilson, who run the farm today, took over and opened a retail store for customers to purchase produce directly from the farm. At that point, Wilson Farm only consisted of a two-car garage serving as a farm stand, but in the 1960s, half a building was constructed behind the garage to expand the business. Later in 1996, they built an 8,500 square foot 18th century style barn, which we see today. They further expanded their farm by adding another 500 acres in Litchfield, New Hampshire.
Although the trend of most farms in Lexington declined and more mass-market grocery stores were introduced, there was a counter-movement of many families who desired the fresh local produce that Wilson Farm made available without the use of many pesticides and chemicals. These customers tend to look at the appearance of the product as an indicator of its quality, and thus Wilson Farm changed the types of produce they sold. As Don explains, their produce has to attract the customers through an attractive aesthetic quality.
Produce is sold it has to have an appealing look, and if it doesn't have that appealing look, it doesn't sell. Yeah, vibrant colors, healthy, smooth skin.
According to Pete Lotvis, the market manager at Wilson Farm, the three biggest festivals are Strawberry Fest, Corn Fest, and Tomato Fest. Close to 20 years old, Corn Fest exhibits free samples of foods made from freshly harvested corn as well as games such as a corn shucking competition. Also around 20 years old, Tomato Fest provides samples of more than 15 varieties of tomatoes grown at Wilson Farm. Strawberry Fest, about 10 years old, also involves samples and games. A few years ago, Wilson Farm tried to break the Guinness World Record for the largest strawberry shortcake ever made.
In addition, Wilson Farm has been providing corsages and boutonnieres for prom for about 15 years, and they've had a fresh-cut flower shop since the 1970s. Other well-known traditions include the free haunted hay rides in October for Halloween and Christmas trees during the holiday season.
So although most farms in Lexington declined in business as suburbia grew, Wilson Farm adjusted to consumer demand and now prospers as an integral part of the local community. The roots it has embedded here ensures its long-term stability in the future as families continuously return for its produce and traditions.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to Strawberry